Hi guys, here's a behind the scenes look for the painting steps and processes tools for a 1/20th scale CPIG from the Maschinen Krieger property by Wave Models, as produced for the Weathering magazine. Hope you like it. Hey guys, so here's a kit that I brought back. I made this one when I was back over in Tokyo, and I haven't had a chance to paint it, so I've been saving it for another project. So here it is all put together. Now this is a semi-custom build. I put it together basically out of the box, but instead of going with the normal process of using these plastic joints, I sculpted in some with using Tamiya putty. Not Tamiya basic putty that I used for texture before. This is the 2-part epoxy putty, that the beige one. I think it's like 6 or 8 hour set one. And I used that with some leftover putty. I then did these joints, the weld marks, excuse me. And I didn't have enough to cover it all, so while I was putting it together, I squeezed out some extra. You can see just in here, I've squeezed out some extra from the paint, from the all over the place today. I squeezed out some extra styrene from the glue where it extrudes out, and I sculpted in the some weld marks in there. Not that it really makes a big difference or matters, it's just it's fast and easy to do that way. Once it's painted, you can't really see the difference at this scale. These are also custom. I put in these cables for the back of the feet, and some little dust-proof covers, etc. to customize them as well. Once that's all painted up, here's one thing. I made this modification here. Let's see if I can see it nicely on the hand, but Wave people and Yokohama-san don't like it, so I'll remove that and just glue it back on and make it normal. I was going to go through the process of making it look like one of the manipulators had come off, but it's not popular, so I'm not married to it. Let's get rid of it. Now sprays, I've always done these outside, and hey, stop interrupting me, guy. And I've always done these outside. I do them in short bursts like this. I've had airbrush booths set up over the years, but I like the short spray walk away method, and because you can do other stuff in between, right? Now here I'm shooting it's mahogany from Mr. Color, and be careful, guys. Is that dry? You don't know? Did you test it? And this is just out on the balcony of my apartment. Now, I swirl it, and I was making a very pedantic point there to show you to swirl it and not shake it. I've been told by dudes what know stuff that shaking it is, it agitates the bubbles in the gas mixture too much. So you're not meant to shake the crap out of it like we usually do and you see people do on TV. You give it that swirl. Now, you can see here, I change the angle and I go for, I'd estimate 5 or 6 very light, thin passes. I read about people online. I don't enter into these conversations because, they'll always come back to me with some comment like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, now I do, dude. I've got videos, so I know stuff. And like this. But I read about people having troubles like orange peel, and drips and so on, and that's upside down. Look at this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing. And I hear about that stuff, but that's mostly for me the keeping the can stationary, not moving. You got to keep the can moving. It's like shooting a machine gun out of a helicopter. That's the worst analogy ever, isn't it? But you're firing it in short bursts, otherwise you can't keep it on target because it's moving too fast. But in this case, the paint comes out at such a wonderful fast velocity out of these cans. You have to adjust your technique for it to work. Now, this is all basically on the same day. I went from mahogany, I let it dry. You can do it straight away. It basically goes touch dry in a couple of minutes, and then switch over from Mr. Color mahogany, which is a satin, to this one's TS7 Racing White from Tamiya. And see, I was really impressed. Look at that, how it self shadows because I'm doing it from above. And then this one, it'll take more coats, but because it's gloss, you need to take even a little bit more care. The more matte your spray is, the quicker you can get it on. It doesn't tend to look as good. Now this one's a full gloss paint, so it's taken me 3, 4 very thin coats here. I hope the technique kind of sinking in now. It's just the short sprays, and we're good. Hey guys, here we go. We've got our sea pig, and so this is say 5 or 6 nice thin, fast, light coats of this. Of course, I put it in the wrong way. Tamiya spray. Everyone's really worried and concerned about it. So I'll show it. It's TS7 Racing White. And it's a semi-gloss. No, sorry. Tsuya Ari to kaite aru. So it says it's got it's a full gloss paint. And this is probably the best off-white that I found for using for making anti-flash white for the Maschinen Krieger range. Now, it's not super important. It's just a slightly yellowy white. And the reason it was slightly yellow was that the photography techniques of the 1980s when Maschinen Krieger, when it was SF3D, FF Sunday, was photographed, they were using film, they weren't using digital, and the yellow was being taken out of the photos, and they didn't have the sophisticated software that we have nowadays to color correct, and it was a little bit more difficult. So they overdid it, they put yellow into their models so that they would turn out properly. And I think it was also a nod to Star Wars. Star Wars also used a quite yellowy white to get that look that we love on the screen. So after doing this, I then will hand brush on to get up the proper thickness of white. Doing it with an airbrush or with a can, it never gets what I believe to be the right thickness of white. So I just do it up to about this stage, and then I move on to a hand brush, and I'm going to use these. Again, it's not super important. I've used just gloss white and gloss yellow before. I don't happen to have the standard versions in my paint collection right now. So rather than sit around and wonder, oh, what am I going to do? Move ahead with what you've got. And, improvise, overcome, adapt. So I'm going to go with Off-White by Mr. Color. It's a full gloss paint, and RLM04 Yellow, which are super useful. It's a semi-gloss. It's very close to normal gloss yellow. And I'll mix some of them up into a dish, and away we go. Okay, this one's a brand new paint. So as you guys, I harp on this a lot. Always, well, that came really good. Always give them a good proper stir, because you want to make sure you're getting the layers at the bottom. Oh, it's nice and it's quite thin for Mr. Color. Want to make sure you're getting all of that goodness from the bottom. Let me get round to the side so you can see. My hairy gorilla hand's not in the way. Now I estimate that's about 1.5 suits worth of paint. There you go, it's science. Wipe the lid. I'm always pretty careful about this so I get a good seal. It stays nice and clean in there. Now yellow, I don't need much yellow. Give it a quick clean in here. See the paint gets stuck there, but clean. I've used this a few times. It's still relatively mixed, but still. Now yellow is muy powerful. So just a few drops is probably enough. I would guess, again, that that's probably about right. see what Excalibur says. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want any more. Don't want any more yellow, so that's why I dropped some more in. That looks pretty good. We'll see how that dries. Now you can see the contrast there already. This is you know, off-white from Tamiya, but you need it to be a good deal yellower than that. We'll give it a bit of a test though. Might be too yellow, but it's hard to go too far, you know. Oh no, that looks perfect. Once I've got it on the model, instantly my eyeball tells me, bang on, Stinky Link. That's genuine space white. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, that looks good. You can see a few places there. It's reactivating some of the red underneath and creating a very interesting blemish, which is well cool. Yep, that's what we want. Toe caps, yeah, that looks right. And this one can go on nice and thick, because you want it to look like the, you know, the ceramic armor on a spacesuit. It's meant to be like a, you know, like an anti-radiation finish. Is the idea in the backstory. So nice thickness is actually necessary. You can't spray it on too thin and expect to have the same look. Just won't look right. Yep, that's looking right. I haven't seen it for a little while. I missed you, Space White. Now here, watching back, putting the video together, I went quiet for a very long time. I'm one of those people that I can do short bursts of activity of painting and talking at the same time, but once I get into you guys are probably the same as me, right? I mean, once you get into a creative flow, I think it is proven, especially for blokes. I mean, we can only really focus on one thing at once, right? So I get into kind of, I don't know if I could even say a deep trance, but I get into the zone, and I really focus on doing these, you know, and I often notice my body temperature actually goes up, and I do get quite tired. Even, you know, this one is not particularly detailed work, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe I'm switched off. But in any event, I find it hard to babble and say things of worth whilst producing some of these for longer periods of time. So this one's a bit of a test. I didn't want to let it go quiet for too long, because I know some of you guys, you let it play in the background, and it might be, you know, as boring as watching some guy paint something and letting the paint dry. It might be that. So let me know what you think, please. Yeah, that's looking good already. Watching this video back together with you, one of the things I am noticing is the paint in my dish there, it is pretty thick. You know, hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? So I could look backwards and say, hey, that's way too thick, what are you doing? But, you know, that model turned out really, really well. I'm very impressed. You know, it was one of those ones where I got to the end and I went, hey, that does look good. I wish I was as good as this guy. Feeling. I know that probably sounds really funny, but I do. I finish it and I go, wow, that turns out really good. Who did that for me? Wait a minute. I noticed the paint thickness here. It's getting a bit thick. Well done, Link. You spotted that. What a pro. Thinner, shaker cap. He knows what he's doing. See the thinner. Is that confusing when I talk over myself like that? If yes, I'll refrain in the future, but I knew that was coming up and I thought it was pretty funny. But I'll give you one tip here. What I do is, for the earlier stages, the paint is a lot thicker, just for coverage, get a lot more done in a shorter time. As it goes along, depending on the finish that's required and to make it a lot smoother, I do start thinning it back. And if it really gets nasty, if it gets bad, this did have a couple of thick chunks on it. I sandpaper them off, and you'll see that in the weathering video. I go around and I sandpaper off a couple of spots. But basically, start out thicker, get plenty of coverage, develop some thickness on the model, and then work up to thinner, smoother coats towards the latter stages of the project. Now that won't work for all models and all scales. What I'm doing right now is particularly suited to 1/20th scale large organic curve models. So when I did it on the Gundam, it was a little bit different. When I do it on Games Workshop models from now, I'll do it a little bit differently. And I have worked on it, over the past 10 years, making a bunch of different models. People forget that I did paint a few different genres like this. You can adjust it to it. But having said that, though, I prefer to do Maschinen Krieger this way. Working with other genres, we can break out different paints and give them a try as well. Watching back here, I'm really liking how the shadows are set up underneath the bottom parts of this suit. Now you can see I didn't worry about getting some of the shadow parts with the white because I knew these steps would come up, and you'll see people write about, and they'll go to great lengths to set up a lighting gradient by using their airbrush, and that's fine. It's good. I do that too. No problems there, but you can easily set it up quite quickly with a couple of spray cans, right? And it was fast and easy. And what's not to like about fast and easy? So capturing some of these colors, it's blooming. I think that's the word for it. It's the whites overexposing there, so some of the details hard to pick up. One of the joys of here I am painting white again. Every second model, right? Actually, the next one's white too. Yay! But this one's yellow, so it's different. Now, it'll probably be easier if I say it, but you can see in some places, if you squint it down and look, you can see that that gloss isn't helping either, is it? I leave some white poking through. Now, with my videos, you've heard me babble before that I leave shadow coats poke through. Well, in the same way, I've got two tricks. That's all I got. Leave stuff poked through, and then put stuff over the top of it. Modeling done. That's it. But I shouldn't have laughed at that. That was pretty bad. Letting the white poke through on this one, it does also look like a different kind of chip. So and that helped me get a lot of depth on this model because I had chips all the way through to the mahogany, the base color. So you can go from, you've seen the finished one, right? So it's got the green on top, can go through to the yellow, can go through to the white, can go through to the dark red underneath. And it sounds like a lot of work, and I wouldn't do that if this was a gaming miniature. I wouldn't go to that much trouble. But this is it's a magazine showpiece, so I've got to bring out my A game, and bringing multiple layers like that into a finish. There's no way to achieve that same level of thickness and detail and apparent weight of the model without putting those layers on. And none of that work is wasted. All of those layers are there. Our eyes see it. Our brain knows what's going on. Your brain looks at that and you go, wow, that's thick, deep, detailed, there's a lot going on. I want to go to there. I want to wear that suit. So that's just one thing you can take from it. Now, if you're in a hurry, you don't want to go to that much trouble, you could skip a bunch of these steps. That would be fine. So I offer up a lot of these things. I'm not always saying, don't always do it this way. I don't always. When I needed to produce some of these guys for Hobby Japan, I didn't go to all of these steps. Some of these steps, it's a little bit overkill for a studio one. The studio ones are actually a little bit underdone. The studio guys, usually Some of them think I overdo it a bit because I'm tainted with that Western influence of my unfortunate background. So overdoing it to them is not a good thing. But in this one, I wanted to show you all of the steps that it takes to get a model ready for the weathering magazine, which is what it's doing in this case. And then in the future, we can scale it back and do a more simple version as well. I hope that makes sense. So you can pick and choose what you want from this one. Cool. Now I'm looking at this and I'm searching around for the videos that came before it, but there's none because I'll let it play in the background here. You'll hear it. I'm working away, and I realized I wasn't bloody filming it. But just real quick, so I went for a sharper brush this time because I wanted I wanted the little dotty appearance around the outside of this. It's just a hit. Yeah, there was a big miss there, Link. You got to get that camera running. Here we go. Decided it was too boring to use. It was actually good stuff. But anyway, you get to see most of it here, but you can see I'd already sketched it out. Because I've done these patterns before, I've got a pretty good idea. I know my way around these suits, and I know the areas I wanted to do. It's based off a marine animal, like a shark or a ray, and mixing that with the World War idea of the counter color, the reversed shadow highlight look. And for these suits, because they're kind of, they're organic curves, that scheme will work pretty well. You can use splinter work okay too, but the splinter camo is more of an aggressive look, and it seems to suit the Strahl faction more. So I've, especially with the studio ones, I've mostly gone with so splinter and different types of camo for them. For these mercenary, the Merc suits, I think these marine style, ocean marine style patterns give them a really nice flavor. Now I wanted the dotty look. You can go for it, but by using different brushes, you can give different outlines to the camo. Use a flat square edge brush. You can go for like a mini like a digital camo type effect. This one I went for the sharpish brush. Sometimes I just like to use one brush for most of a project, and that's actually what's happened here. It's an old brush from AK Interactive. It's about a medium sized one. It's about the same size as a standard brush from Citadel, if that translates. And I see these camo things in here. I decided to not use them, so you can see later how I paint them out. So that should make you feel a little bit more relaxed and confident about this. If you don't like your camo, it's not set in stone. You can always repaint it out. But so I went around here. This is RLM 66 green gray, which is a Maschinen Krieger staple, and from the Mr. Color range, and it's perfect for this. And it's just the one shade darker than what I want to use for the color coat, which is coming up next. But yeah, sorry about missing the first half of that, guys. Work in progress. I'll get better at doing this. Okay. And what's that happening in the background when I was doing this? Wow, right? Due to modern technology, I've also saved you from hearing that and edited it out. Nice. Now onto our main performer, RLM 02 Gray. This is the Maschinen Krieger color, and the reason it's used is because it was the first one Koyo Kurama Sensei decided to use for his AFS Mark 1 series in the kickoff episode in Hobby Japan back in 1980. I think it was 1983, and he just happened to use that color. He liked it. Remember, he's mentioned it to me that he liked the idea that it was a universal green gray. And but I agree. I mean, it's a really cool color, and definitely have something like this. I'll work to find some equivalents for it. I wouldn't mind this in, say, Vallejo or something like that as well. But it's a wonderful and useful color to use for science fiction projects. Usual deal here. I've mixed this stuff in here, and I've switched out to a flat brush. I can get. Now this is not always the case. You'll see me flick backwards and forwards, but for some of this initial sketch out here, I went with a flat-tipped brush, and I can tend to get a thinner, smoother coat if I use a flat brush. Now I say tend to, because it's they both produce different effects. So it's better to experiment with what it does actually in your hand, because it's not it's the tools, but it's also not the tools. How you're doing it with your hand, but I know, is that a rabbit hole I really want to get into? Because I in a way, part of my business is selling tools, right? And selling the know-how of how to do it. So the flat brush, technically, it will hold less paint than an equivalent sized round brush, for example. So your stroke length will tend to be shorter with it too. I do find that they're a little bit sharper and pointier in a way too, but I find the stroke, pardon me if my language isn't super accurate, but I find the stroke to then be choppy. That's how it feels to me. Painting with square tipped brushes to me feels choppy. Sometimes I want the effect to be choppy. If you stick with me, I'm sure this will eventually start making sense over the course of a handful of models and projects. But I find the round brush, your standard pointy type brush, will give me more of a smooth flowing effect. But it can be sharper and more vectored. The square tip like this one, I feel that it leaves less vectors. You could call them brush strokes, I guess, but it leaves less evidence of that in the brushwork, in the paintwork, which you may want or you may not want. I find that that's an artistic thing that you can incorporate into different things. And I keep my language and my methodology here. My idea here, it's to be loose, because I don't want to just catch a fish with you and show you how to catch a fish for a day. I think once you learn how to do this, you can paint and approach any model, any genre, and give each of them a unique and different look by approaching your models this way. Because one thing you'll find, there's plenty of modelers out there, plenty of artists you could call them, who can produce pretty nice models, but they all look the same. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? They all have the same scaled effect look on all of them. They weather them all in exactly the same way. And it's not a bad thing, I guess, but it's because they've learned a handful of processes and they're approaching every model basically the same way. It's like those people who say, I've got 30 years of modeling experience, but no, a lot of them have got 1 year of modeling experience repeated 30 times. I tend to do every model slightly differently, just for fun. And that way I find, people say, how do you improve quickly? Per every model. It's like, well, every one of them has been different, and it's been a constant series of experiments. Some work, some don't. So I'd like to instill that freedom from the fear of wanting to experiment with your finishes. Now, saying that, copying along and following these will never hurt, because you get to experiment along with me, if that makes sense as well.
Walking the mile, painting the camo. Walking the mile, painting the camo. Walking the mile, still painting the camo.
Okay, that one was a bit of a gag. I filmed that as a bit of a joke to share for say Instagram and Facebook as a video. But you can see what I mean. Sometimes I'll flick up to a larger brush to speed up here. This would be a point. You could also switch this out and airbrush from this stage for what I call the hybrid finish. We'll work on that at a later stage, because some of you guys, I know you'd like to maybe incorporate airbrush usage into it, and it is faster. Is it as good a finish? Actually, no, I can make it almost as interesting, but it's just different. But with this one, the guys at Ammo by Miguel Jimenez, they did ask me if I could do a full hand brush for this one, and I thought that would work out really well for my patrons as well, to show you that we can go from start to finish on hand brushing something like this. So I stayed with the smaller brush to keep a lot more vectors and control. It takes a little bit more time, but ultimately it does produce a slightly superior finish. You can see here there's a lot of control. Now, you've got to stay switched on to a point, leave some of the yellow poking through. Now it is tedious, and that's why you can see I stopped there. I'm giving it a good look over. It's not just, you know, belting along switched off. I'm having a good look, and I'm assessing it as we go. Now it's it's different from the usual modeling methodology in that you'll do you'll do a primer, you'll do a color coat stage, and then you'll do your weathering. They're all separate, distinct stages. With my methodology, that's not the case. Technically speaking, some of this is actually weathering in a way because I'm allowing previous coats to poke through, and I'm just not delineating. I'm not choosing. I'm not saying, "Hey, this is weathering." You know, to me, it's you can hear my kid going in the background there. Don't worry, she's in another room away from the fumes. She's just loud. But so in a way, I'm you know, I'm kind of ruining it for myself because I've never made a methodology that's been easy to sell, like the airbrush ones are. But it's just paint the damn model, 101. And ultimately, that's what artists do. We've always done that. Yeah, you can block it out into stages, but you know, I'm not equating myself to these people, but you know, you get Van Gogh, Rembrandt, what have you. They, they didn't knock it down into SBS steps for internet forums, right? They did have steps and processes, but you know, they started and they finished the damn painting or the sculpture or what have you. This one's a little bit more similar to that you're just starting out and you just paint it. I hope that made some sense and was valuable for you. Skipping forward just a little bit, I've finished thickening up and solidifying the camouflage colors on this. Now all of this has been done with RLM04. You can see it here on my palette, and I used mostly, I went with the smaller brush, and then to put on some other layers I put on with the wider, flatter brush like that. And you can see there's a few little nice marks across the top where you can see where that's happened. It turned out really well so far. I skipped ahead just a little bit because, you know, it was watching paint dry, and it's a little bit of a tedious process, and I've shown you quite a bit of it before. If it's super interesting to you, of course I can go back and show you on another one. These will be repeat performances, but and I've gone back and I've covered up. I used some propeller color for this one as a and this the manipulator here as a precursor to painting over with grey violet and standard Maschinen Krieger color. Next off, I better get the joints painted. Don't you wish your bench set itself up like this, that you just flick the page open and boom, everything's out? Now, after all that work with lacquer paints, the lacquer fumes right now is that's what they're lacquer paints, lacquer fumes. And of course, the opposite of that, Drew, is they're chock full of fumes. So now the wonderful aroma of plain tap water, and oh boy, it's nice. I usually use Vallejo acrylics for the hey. I usually use Vallejo acrylics for the just get it close up. I usually use Vallejo acrylics for the rubber parts on it because the sheen of the Vallejo, it's really nice matte, and it gives it some contrast between the satin sheen of the armor, and it just looks right to me. It looks right to my eyes. So I go with that. My eyes usually don't lead me wrong. In my Tokyo studio, I've got one of the Panzer Aces range that I think was called Dark Rubber. So I've used that for years, and I thought it was really good. I don't happen to have that here, so I pulled out a couple of colors here that looked close-ish. One from the MiG range, the grey-blue. It's got a nice FS number, but I think it looks more like a highlight. It looks more like light rubber. Going into my model color box, I've got this one, London Grey. And this looks a really good match. It's a slightly bluish. I like red tones for some of the details, and then blue tones for others as a contrast, and I think that's what this will give me. A little note to self here on when I start working with acrylic paints for probably the next project after this, I'll need to get round to the side of the camera so you can actually see some of the action instead of my monkey arm. Yep. Bit of water. Let's see how this mixes up. Bit more water. Oh yeah, that's a nice color. Yeah, I like that a lot. Brush maybe a little bit overloaded, so give it a bit of a shape. Let's see how it looks. Not too bad. It's maybe a shade or so lighter than the dark rubber, but once we wash this, it'll probably look just right. Acrylics are nice. I think I might do some more work with acrylic soon. It's coming into the colder weather here. I've got the windows closed. And not to be sitting in a breeze as I'm painting is actually quite nice. See, with the lacquer paints, the performance is fantastic, but I gotta have that ventilation, right? Anything I go over the edges there, I can come back and fix it up with a little bit of acrylic thinner, and it won't hurt the underlying paint. It's very easy to clean up. Cool, now I'll go around and do that on the whole model. Now, two things here I really wanted to share. First one is the background sound. It's not what you think. But the second one was, this was ultimate fail. This red color from MIG. So I wanted to mix up and make a custom paint. That's what the little, that nice little off dark red, red primer type color panel. And I didn't have the particular cover. I've used Cavalry Red in the Vallejo model color range before. I didn't have it. So here I am, ultimate fail, wrestling with this this bottle of paint. And, this is gold. You can't get this quality professionalism out there on the internet these days. So I had to include this. If you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, then we're all win. Now, here I fix it. Actually, it came of some value. With these the Vallejo type bottles there, God, this one really, the lacquer paint, see, I've had a bit of practice with that, so I know where to put my hands to not get in the view of the shot. But with these bloody acrylic bottles, all you're getting is hands, right? Anyway, I used a toothpick there. I know you guys are all smart. I know you know how to do it, so you're not losing a lot there. But that's what I was doing there, and I was trying to be clever and share something. But that happened. So that's what I've done in the past. Is I just I shoot a toothpick, the really thin cylindrical type ones down there, and that tends to be all that it needs to fix it up. So I've got no clue why I wasn't showing the bottles to the camera here. It must have been the lack of thinner fumes made me dumb. This color here is German black brown, and it'll be on the PDF. I better put that together so that you've got the resource guide for it. I didn't have the usual color that I use, which is exactly for this purpose. As a kind of a cheeky nod to armor modelers, I started putting red primer panels on my Maschinen Krieger things. And it was just for a bit of a gag at first, but then I really liked it. And Cavalry, is it Cavalry Brown? In the Vallejo model color range is dead on. It's perfect for it. I didn't have it. So rather than wait 2 weeks, 1 week for the paint to show up, I made it. And I felt clever, smart, resourceful, and artistic all at once. It didn't make the hair on the top of my bald spot come back in, sadly, but I did feel all of those things, and I got to brag about it to my wife that, hey, I just made a color I don't have. And she patted me on that very bald spot. So here it is. I'm testing it out. It's not bad. It's a little thin, but you know, the color was dead on. I was pretty happy with how it mixed up. It took 2 thin coats, maybe 3. I was a little bit careful with it, and you know, painting this color of red, you know, painting red over this white yellow is a little tough. But you can see there, I'm just kind of thin even coats there. That might be thick for some of you guys. I've heard some friends comment that I really lay it on. Maybe that's the case. But so two what I think are thin coats there, had it going on pretty well. And it was also, I used a different kind of paint to give it a different sheen, luminosity factor, which will help it look different from the rest of the armor panels. By the way, I should have made mention that that's actually the red panel. It's not a necessary thing. It's not a canon thing. That's a total link addition to the Ma.K universe. These are all added details that I'd consider them intermediate to advanced steps to just increasing the visual detail of the model. And wow, I've really got that gorilla paw in the camera there, haven't I? So what my thinking is here, if you were happy to go ahead with the model with the previous steps before red, then you're done, you're good. You can go ahead to basic weathering from there. These ones are adding visual interest and detail. Now, these are not specific colors to the Maschinen Krieger property. These are all my particular own invention. I just reached into my little tray, my little box that I keep the Mr. Color paints in, and I grabbed all of the green-gray hues that I had, and I just mixed in different amounts. I'll list them up, but I can see, just eyeballing it there, I'm pretty sure one of them looks like duck green from Mr. Color, and another one I think is one of the Gundam ranges. I think it might be like the, what's the green dude called? Zaku. I think it might be the Zaku main color, which it's actually a really awesome color. Not only might I paint a Zaku in that color, but I've got to use that on another model. It's just such a really kick-ass color. But now this one, use it with restraint. The whole idea here is to pick out details that just to add interest to different, very small areas of the model by putting different hues of similar colors. Now don't go nuts. I mean, I wouldn't put red over all of these, for example. It would look silly. You've got to use some of these techniques with restraint. So the red panel, I went with 1. I think any more would be overdoing it. And it stands out that way. It works because it's 1. Now these ones, because they're variations of the theme, now I'm using the colors mostly by themselves, but I've also mixed it into the base layer here so that there's some coherency between the colors. And due to the nature of the lacquer paints, they're mixing there on my little palette. I'm basically painting off a wet palette there, right, because of the way these paints work. And you can go around and pick out little details. Now you could equally do this with lacquer, with acrylic paints. I will do that on the next model for sure. I'll show you how I do it with white. But this just adds a little bit of visual detail to a model that's already quite interesting, and it's just that little extra, say 3-5% to make it look interesting. Now that may not sound like a lot, and if you had to get this ready for a deadline and you're in a real hurry, I wouldn't recommend doing it. But there's a big difference. I heard an analogy once that racehorses, for example, that the difference between a mediocre performing racehorse and a top money producing racehorse is like 3% of their finishing times. The $1 million horses are like 2-3% faster than their counterparts. So in a way, you could say one of the, besides the basic finish I'm putting into this, it's these little small 3% details that I put in that make the difference between this and say like a standard finish. But adding them on, layering them on over the top of the that hand brushed custom finish there, it adds a lot of detail, and it increases the complexity of it. And our eyes like to see that. Our eyes like it, and our brain likes it. Do I do it on every model? No, I try to restrain myself, but after I did it on this one, I thought, yeah, that looks cool. You know, I got to tick off that little box in my mind. So yeah, so I'm looking around it. There's no real hard and fast rules for it, and restraint. If I'm sorry to overuse that word, but you know, you can't use it too much. There's another one that I've done. It's in the cabinet there. If you get along to Yellow Submarine in Akihabara, there's another spacesuit in there, and I think I took this effect, this hack, this technique to the extreme on an all white suit because I wanted to see how far I could go. So the base of the color was all of this anti-flash white like this, a slightly yellowy one, and I put a lot of white, bright white panels into it, and that's actually the one that I first put the red panel into as well. I don't think it was it wasn't so much of a hit with the established, the Maschinen Krieger Studio people, but everybody outside of that seemed pretty happy with it, and it gets photographed and shown to me on social media a lot. So this finish on this suit that you guys are seeing, it has a lot of nods to that suit, and a lot of things that I invented on that suit I've reproduced and shown you here. But I've also mixed them in with a bunch of other stuff that I kind of invented along the way, like the green of this suit actually has a lot of nods. I don't know if you guys have seen some of my work, like there's a Raptor suit that featured in the Weathering magazine for the Mud issue, and the green of this one kind of invented some of that for that article. So this one is kind of a cool Frankenstein suit with a few things built in. Mr. Color 23 duck green. This, it doesn't really feature. Oh no, what am I saying? Of course this is a Canon color from the studio. Sorry. And this is one of the base colors that's mixed into RLM02 grey green for the base of the SAFs, the SAFS standard green and grey, the classic, the super classic one. I've got one of them. I can share if you want to see a photo of it. But I should do another one with you because it's an ultra classic of the ultra classic suit. And this is one of the base colors used on that. Now I use this super sparingly at the end as a super highlight, a last final stage highlight, because it belongs to the same spectrum as this green-gray continuum, I guess you could call it. But they're kind of colors that coexist together very happily. And you can see it's almost as if this Gundam color has been mixed into. It seems to be halfway between the duck green and the RLM02, and I use that very sparingly to pick out just a couple of really cool details there. Now, another reason I picked this one is it's close between my base color that I made, the white yellow, and the main body color. So there's a few places like that, like those kind of those attachment rails up on the backpack there. But I knew that it might give them a good middle ground sort of color just for picking out a detail there. A couple of places I'd already highlighted with that Gundam color. So just a couple of them, the paint's nice and thin. It's translucent, so it's I wouldn't say as thin as a glaze, but it's quite thin. And if you use this paint, you'll see it dries quite translucently. Now I could feel the brush was quite thin on my. I could feel the paint was quite thin on my brush here. Excuse me. So I very carefully pointed it into a couple of very small details in the front of the suit here. Now, if you're trying this one out, I would recommend going with acrylic paints here, because using lacquers for doing this kind of detail work, the risk is high at this stage. At the early part of the process, I recommend it's great. Risk is low. At this stage, risk is high, very high. But if you were to mess it up, it's not the end of the model. It is recoverable, but it's not that it's so much a lot of work, but I don't want to get into I don't want to give you too much overconfidence to get into a step where you think, oh no, I did what that link idiot said and I've ruined it. You wouldn't. It would add flavor to it. You'd have to roll with it. But for the purpose of this, of adding color and accentuating detail here, acrylics would just make it a lot easier and safer for you. And I probably should too. You can see I got some paint on my fingers there. I should have been listening to my own bloody advice there. But it turned out great, so all good. In some spots like this, I'm happy with how I can paint for the camera here. Here I'm doing it. For some reason, the acrylic paint stages, I'm not just in my mind yet, so I need a bit more practice for that. You know, practice makes perfect, right? So I can paint these things, but it's the learning the additional skill of doing it whilst showing you. RLM 66 Black Grey, Mr. Color 116. This is a super Maschinen Krieger Studio color, and it's used for all of the kind of background details. And I'm sure Koyokama Sensei, he loves this one because it's you know, it's an aircraft color from painting the World War II aircraft that he loves. And this one's used for the kind of the background stuff that it's not a detail so much, but you can make it into a detail. So in this case, I'm using it for one of the radar pods, probably electronic countermeasure pods, I think they are. And then the manipulator, I almost always coat it in this one. I was going to say base, but I've based it in propeller color, and I've done a layer of this over the top of it. And it gives me the correct background color look that I'm happy with for this. Now right at the end of the video, of course, I have to show you what went very, very wrong. Now, I could pretend that this is how I mean to do it, and you know, I almost always invariably seem to be working with this color over thinned, but I just put way too much thinner in. I think it's because I know I'm not going to use much, so I don't put out much paint, and then I'm heavy-handed with the thinner, and boom, I'm working with the super thin paint. Anyway, so what I did was I put it on thin and let plenty of the propeller color poke through. Now, so many times I've not planned to do that, I end up doing it, and then I remember partway through and I think, oh yeah, I really like this look of working like this. So that's the thing. So next time I'll plan it, but it just seems to happen that way. Particularly, I think it gives a good effect if you use the thin RLM 66 on the manipulator. It gives a pretty good look. So yeah, I want to show what I do here, straight from the bottle. Sometimes, you know, if I'm in a hurry, I thought, oh, how can I make this valuable to you guys? So what I do is I get a bigger brush, dunk it straight into the paint thing, throw it into the dish, and then use it to paint an area that will accept thicker paint, say the soles of the feet, because they can accept that, and you want it to be relatively thick because my models tend to move around, like they get displayed in different places, so I paint the soles of the feet a bit thicker just to survive that a little bit more. And what's the word? Hamidashiteru. I'm really sorry. I was thinking in Japanese for a moment, so I couldn't think of the English word. The paint creeps around the outside of the bottom from the brush, right? And I don't dislike that. Now what I'll do is, you could see there, I look along the edges, places where it's poked around, I rub it off with my finger, and it leaves these really cool and awesome dirty streaks. And just be careful where you poke around afterwards with that, but that's a thing. And I'm sure you guys have done it too. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much for making it through with me. Next up, let's do some basic weathering on this guy. Thanks, see ya!